You're listening to the official podcast of Asbury University, produced by students with God-honoring conversations that inform, edify, and encourage. This is Asbury. We explore culture and current topics through a Christian worldview, promoting a well-balanced life, and we empower our community to belong, become, and be set apart. I'm your host, Abby Lobb. Welcome to This is Asbury. On this episode of the podcast, journalism professor and prolific writer and journalist Rich Manieri talks with Asbury Journalism Department guest Cal Thomas. And Cal Thomas is a renowned columnist and conservative news voice that many of you will recognize. So I hope you enjoy this conversation and check out some of Cal's work to learn more about what he has to say about current events.
All right, we're here with Cal Thomas. Thank you for joining us. Pleasure to have you here on Asbury's campus.
My pleasure.
Can you talk a little bit about the opportunity for Christians in journalism today?
I think one of the problems we faced was what happened after the Scopes trial a century ago. A lot of believers said, well, they don't want our point of view. They don't want our contributions. We're just going to retreat into the cave, and Hollywood is evil. The arts are evil. If we get involved in any of them, we'll suffer the consequences. And so the only thing I learned in physics before I flunked table of contents was that nature abhors a vacuum. And by pulling out, there was nobody there with a Christian worldview to be represented in these areas of what we now call collectively the media. And we are now trying to claw our ways back up the hill and gain some kind of standing. It's very difficult, but it's not impossible.
What do you say to the young person who thinks they may want to go into the media, but is maybe intimidated because they think their worldview is not going to be welcome?
I recommend counseling if you want to go into the media. No, look, I think we have to realize that as believers, we serve the living God, who is more powerful than any force, not only on earth, but in the universe. I would say to young people to go into a newsroom, to a film studio, to a university that is unlike Asbury, that doesn't have a biblical worldview, and see yourself as a servant of the Lord and a servant of others. They will ask you eventually, why are you like the way you are? And then you will have an opportunity to tell them after you have shown them. We want to tell before we show. Most people want to see that your faith matters in your life and that you are consistent in it. So I tell young people, get in the door. You can't do anything in the parking lot. Take any job that you can get. And realize always that older people love to give advice. And you compliment them when you ask for their advice. And that can be your classroom in a way when they pour their experience and advice into you.
In media, do you think the Christian worldview is more unwelcome, or is it more misunderstood, or both?
I think it's both, because most people have had a negative experience, either with Christians or people who, even in their family, who claim to be one thing and behaved another way, or they think that believing in God is harmful to their careers. And in some ways it is, depending on how you model it. Now, in my case, I went in and joined their organizations, their editorial organizations. I went to their conventions. I went to dinner with them. I showed them that I didn't have horns or fit the stereotypes of what they thought a Christian and a conservative should be like. And I really cared about them. I would ask about their families. I would listen to them tell their stories. And I think I gained a certain level of credibility with them that allowed me in many ways to share my faith with them. So if you don't start with your agenda or an agenda and you simply are obedient to the call of Christ in your life, he gives you the power to do what he wants done.
I also think that comes with that, though, you can't be afraid of criticism because of your faith, right?
Oh,
Which
no,
I'm sure you've received plenty of.
Get a lot of it. If you're a Christian, then you should believe this. Or how can you be opposed to this person? You claim to be religious and all this other business. You have to ignore that kind of stuff. I mean, you're going to get that all the time. You have to realize who you're ultimately serving and from whom you want the ultimate blessing. Well done, good and faithful servant. Now, that doesn't mean your critics sometimes don't have a point that you may have missed. I've had that on occasion. I've had a factual error on occasion. My editor usually saves me from all of that. Or I've said something that I had to apologize for later. But even that way, I think you increase your credibility. I remember saying something I later regretted about Rachel Maddow at MSNBC, and I had to apologize to her and publicly. And she got on the air and said that I was basically a real guy because, I was upfront about my mistake. And so I think you build your credibility by acknowledging that you are a sinner, you're not perfect, and you make mistakes. So I try to do that when I do. Of course, I haven't seen any that I've made recently.
How important is it, or just one more question, how important is it to reach out to people who we know might not agree with us or might not share our worldview?
Oh, I think it's critical. I mean, my best friend, Bob Beckel, who is a liberal Democrat, not a leftist, but a liberal Democrat, he and I wrote a column for USA Today for 10 years called Common Ground. And we would argue our positions, and we'd say, well, look, what can we agree on to move the ball forward? So much of our politics today is about scoring points. It's not about solving things. There are all kinds of solutions to all sorts of problems, but the political people don't want to solve a problem, otherwise they lose the issue, like Social Security and Medicare. Everybody knows what needs to be done to reform those programs, but if Republicans mention even the slightest reform, they get demagogued by their opponents in the next campaign as wanting to take Social Security away from Granny. This stuff's been going on for 50 years. So I think you just have to get to know people and I don't like the term the other side. We're fellow Americans. Why are we trying to destroy ourselves? We got plenty of people on the outside who wanted to do that. Why are we helping them? So I have a lot of liberal friends,
Cal Thomas, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of This is Asbury. To learn more about Asbury University, visit asbury.edu.